All right, so welcome. So this is our sync session for 13.4, our second of two synchronous sessions for 13.4's retrospective. The way I like to begin these conversations is to make sure that we're all coming with the same perspective. And the way that I've learned to do this over the years is to make sure is to recite what is referred to as the retrospective prime directive, which states, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. At the end of a project, everyone knows so much more. Naturally, we will discover decisions and actions we wish we could do over. This is wisdom to be celebrated, not judgment to be used to embarrass. So with that shared understanding of what we're doing here in this conversation, and with everyone being willing to share their thoughts, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go in vote order, just like we've been doing the past several of these, and let's see where the conversation leads us. Okay, our top vote getter came from Chan. And it's about who should be our first reviewers. And so is Chan, did he make it? Oh, okay, I will vocalize for him. So we use reviewer roulette, especially we use reviewer roulette a lot when we're up in the main Rails code base. And so this was a suggestion that instead of signing someone just blindly using that tool as first reviewer, to start with someone that is within the secure subdepartment. It has a number of benefits. So like particularly that person's going to have some domain knowledge about the types of features we're trying to build. They'll be able to more quickly understand the code, the changes that are here, and understand what the changes are intended to do. And it should help us increase the collaboration within the entire subdepartment. So I'll let it be there, and see what opinions do you all have about this. Apologies as I scroll.
I guess I'll start by vocalizing my comment that we could consider if we're manually picking to look at the trainee maintainers that are within our stages as a first go-to if you don't have someone in mind.
Okay. And thanks for adding that. And I know I'm echoing, I'm rewriting what you just did. That's just the way that I think. So.
And just to add on that, because I just discussed that this morning with Tiziana, because she's in the maintainer program, and the QA department improved the reviewer roulettes, and now they can have more review being assigned to them by adding a small blue dot at the end of their name or in just status on GitLab. So it's working better right now. So they get a lot more reviews assigned to them by the roulette that was suggested.
Does this have the collaboration benefits that we think it would? Do you think? Do you agree with that assertion?
Sorry.
Royal you, everyone that is here. So there's an assertion that if we to get a reviewer within the stage, not necessarily within group, but within the stage, that this could help with collaboration within the subdepartment. Do you agree with that? Does everybody agree with that assertion? we're being quiet on this one, so I'll go ahead and close that one. And I'll move on to the next one. All right, vote getter number 2 came from Zach. And this was about prematurely resolving discussions on merge requests, where we'll have some MRs that will linger open for a while, and there are questions that seem to remain open for that can remain open for too long. So there were some suggestions on how we can improve this, as far as if it's been open for more than 1 to 2 days, then perhaps ping the reviewer MR, maybe on Slack, and then work to reassigning to someone else. And there's a fair amount of discussion that's already here, but this is an area marked where we can improve. How might we be able to do that?
I think one of the takeaways is that it's totally fine to ping someone on Slack if they're not responsive on GitLab itself. And so in that particular case, the story was that I changed my notification settings when going on vacation, but when I came back, I didn't restored my previous settings, and because of that, I missed a couple of notifications. Well, more than a couple actually. And Zach didn't get answers from me. Without knowing it, I was blocking the merge request. And I realized that when notified about all the discussion being resolved, and this is when I remembered that I was involved in the discussions. That was kind of funny, the way I was notified after the fact. And so that's interesting, because it's one particular story, but there are other ways we can get there, other scenarios. And again, one takeaway for me is that there's no, how should I put that? Over communication doesn't exist. If the reviewer doesn't respond, then try to ping them, and ping them using the @mention in the merge request. I get to do it, so it makes for better visibility, and ping on Slack too, and it's fine to do both actually. And then if it's not enough, to my opinion, it's fine to move on to someone else, some other reviewer, but it might, in the end, it might delay your merge request. So it's not an ideal solution either. So yes, that's it. All for me. Oh yeah, one more thing, sorry, about reassigning to someone else for review. It's fine if you do that, if you ping the initial reviewer and explain why you had to do this. We certainly don't want to do that without notifying the initial reviewer. That wouldn't be a great experience for the reviewer, in my opinion. And better to be explicit, better to ping and to comment on what we do.
I'm having a reaction to this this thread, and I'm not talking about this commentary, but this thread within the within the retro that I'm going to share, which is risking becoming overly prescriptive, and I know it, and so apologies for that, but we're risking. The way we're interacting on MRs, we're globally distributed, and it is hard. It is really, really hard to know who is available when, and based upon, because there's no guarantee that anyone is working when you are, and there's no easy way to know how loaded that individual is with merge requests that they are currently reviewing or working upon either. But we're risking us trying to optimize for individual preferences at the expense of a standard that we're expecting all of our teammates to be beholden to? At what level do we have expectations that are just part of the job versus having to optimize for the individual you are happen to be interacting with? And apologies if that is for how poorly worded that is.
No, it makes sense. Because I mean, I have noticed it's very obvious that like since Mark became a maintainer for our team, we've been leveraging that a lot, and it's been very productive and efficient because just personally how he works is feedback is very detailed. He gives suggestions in terms of what should be changed, patch requests, and the reviews are very quickly. And I've leaned on that a lot to get my stuff through as opposed to relying on other maintainers outside of the team, because that review cycle is way longer. And you know, they prioritize other MRs that they get globally. My concern is that if we rely on that too much, we get kind of like this tunnel vision of just getting accustomed to that. What happens when he takes paid time off, you know, and then we have to rely on other maintainers, and then our workflow, our estimation for complexity, like I factor in review time, right? That gets all thrown out of whack because now we've been relying on a set workflow. So that's why I've been kind of advocating for maybe when domain knowledge is very expected and you've been working on a multi-part MR issue with multiple MRs, it makes sense to stay with that maintainer within the team, but we should really try not to rely on that, because exactly what you said, Thomas, it's like we're trying to optimize for the individual and not, we're deviating a little from the standard workflow. So it is a balance. I don't know what the correct determination of like how we should balance that out, but it's something to keep in mind not to get in that habit. And, you know, to be fair, I've been getting into that habit, so that does worry me.
I also think that this is, this brings up the old discussion of standardizing reviewers and maintainers for the Skier products, which we still haven't done. So there's like a lot of implicit understanding of what that means within the security products versus the Rails code base itself. And I think that we really need to make things more explicit there, either with review roulettes and code owners and other things that would align the repos that we specifically own with the rest of GitLab.
Okay. Anything else on this particular subject area? All right. There have been a few more items that got votes this morning or in the overnight. Apologies while I scroll. All right, we have a tie. I want to go with the one that we talked about last night, is with our friends over in APAC. We have one front end team that is a shared resource for all of our analyzer groups, or analyzer teams themselves, all the backend teams. And Fernando, I'm speaking for you. You're here. Do you want to vocalize your point, or would you like me to speak for you?
So I guess to get some context, so I've predominantly been working. Well, I guess I'd be coming off doing license compliance and move over to SaaS, and now doing fuzzing work. And I think the experience for the most part has been consistent, but there are some pain points. I mean, I guess I'll address the elephant in the room. Maybe because it's a newer team and we're still kind of getting into the workflow and all that. It's been a little bit harder with fuzzing, mostly around everything from like the size of the issues, the state that the issues are when we get them for planning breakdown, all the way down to working with other engineers and coordinating front end and back end. Like coordinating between front end and back end has been good synchronous wise, doing meetings, and we all know what we need to do. But as far as like conveying that back to the issue and keeping the issue up to date with the correct workflow labels, implementation plan, and breakdown, I know that's a lot of overhead, and it took me personally many months to get into that. So I think it's just kind of working into that, but I did want to bring that up in terms of that's been a challenge as far as consistency between teams. Like if it was working with one team and we had a consistent way of being inconsistent, at least that's some type of consistency. But jumping around from team to team, it does make it difficult to communicate on the status of things. So I'm willing to kind of work with everyone else to kind of standardize that, or maybe educate, or kind of be like, hey, this is what other teams have been doing. But it is a little tough when, you know, as an org, we have like each team seems to have, you know, a product manager, front end and back end, the front end engineering manager, back end engineering manager. So those things have been a little bit tough to get consistent. So I don't know if it makes sense for maybe at the product level, and then, you know, the engineering managers for front end, back end to kind of maybe share how they workflows. Some teams are more organized than others. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think communication would help with that. And if you want actual examples, I could provide those if it helps as data points to kind of work things out, but I didn't want to go on a rant. But on the bright side, when challenges have come up, team members have been more than willing to accommodate or open to feedback. It's just like that process of feedback is going to take a while, I think. So
I have something. Sorry, I didn't add any notes. I've just been working on a bunch of other stuff, so focus on the retro. It's been my priority. But I think the way I'm thinking about this is the milestone readiness is our biggest impact. Are we set up to effectively execute, you know, when the milestone starts? And I think that's where we realize any inconsistencies and any flavor that they might be is where it's very noticeable. So yeah, do we have work broken down, refined, distributed, and not just before the milestone starts, but well ahead of it, so we're able to plan out capacity, things like that. Fernando, you mentioned, yeah, having the EMs and the PMs sync up. We do a lot of back channel type of conversations, absolutely. I think it's enlightening that we might want to be more transparent there. So thank you for raising that, because I think that's extremely important. On this note, in terms of milestone readiness, front end has a goal, an OKR this quarter, where we're striving to have things handed off to the team members 2 weeks before the milestone, and that we have a majority of everything refined and ready to go at the start of the milestone. And that's definitely helping, and that's where that transparency helps. Is the sooner we know about this information, the more we can adapt and react to it, and that includes labeling and just making sure everything is fit and finished and ready to go. So.
Just want to add something about that. I just had a comment about this. I've been working on that for the past month, and it's a long going story, but advocating for a stage-aware workflow was particularly meant to address that kind of issues, because we know the security team is shared between all the different front-end, back-end groups, back-end teams or the groups. It's difficult for you to switch from one to another. So we definitely need to work more into educating. The current process is meant to have a quarterly fixed workflow. And once we roll out a new change, we go through a training so that every team member on the secure stage can understand what is the current workflow and what they need to apply. And this should stay like this for the next quarter. So this will really improve the consistency across the groups. And well, it was supposed to be rolled out in August. We're still waiting for small little changes again, the usage of epics versus sub issues, and we will be probably ready for rolling out the first draft. And I think this will be really helpful for that kind of problem.
I just wanted to add on that. I like that idea, because the biggest challenge I've had with consistency is that we were always in a state of flux. Like it felt like every other week, it's like, oh, okay, we tweaked something, right? And I'm in favor of just kind of doing it at the quarterly level, where we kind of outline out a proposal, like try some things out for the next quarter and then refine on that and then do it at that level. It seems a little bit more sane, because, you know, I assume it's a lot of overhead to do the training, to get the team all synced up and to update the docs. So at the quarterly level, I think seems a little bit more reasonable. but I think it has been getting better since I've gotten here. It just has taken time to get used to it, or whatever workflow we end up going with.
Let me ask a contrarian question because I'm having a hard time following this train of thought. If issues are broken up in advance so that there is always one DRI, so we have a back-end implementation issue, we have a front-end implementation issue, we don't have it so that there are multiple assignees to any one issue. And that is done far enough in advance. Why do the individual idiosyncrasies of individual teams' workflows matter?
I think so. I don't think I guess it's like, all right, so we break down the issues as you had described, right? I still think the workflow still encompasses things like the labels, right? Because now you have these issues broken down, sure, just broken down the same way between teams, but then it's like we still need to adhere to the processes for conveying, hey, like, is this issue in itself, the issue itself goes through a life cycle, right? It's like you still need to do implementation plan and planning breakdown as part, like, in that issue itself. And then communicating, is it in development, is it being merged? And then what about the cross-linking, right? It's like, is this issue blocking other front-end issues? Like, that's still part of the workflow. And even how you communicate that can be different, because we have this habit of, we have in the UI that lets you block or is blocked by, but then also different teams have different approaches to how they cross-link in the issue description. Some people use Markdown for tables. Some people just like link the issue and it's written in words, like embedded in the, as in the paragraph. So it's like that part does still matter, I think, in terms of how we communicate, in the issues. I know it's kind of ambiguous, but like those are just the things of day-to-day operations, other than just creating how the issues are broken down within the issues. The workflows within the issues and how they relate to each other still is different within teams. I know it's vague. If you want, I could try to get better examples, but
I'm not going to block on this too much. So I'm burning up some time. I'm going to, I would love to dig into this a little bit more, probably in a coffee chat, because what you're describing to me sounds as if is not a need for further alignment, but to me, it screams that we're too tightly coupled. And so my instincts are to go the opposite direction than to where everybody else is going. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm missing. And so I'll cede the floor with that. I'm not trying to block it. I hear that this is a problem. I'm just more trying to understand why our instincts are to go for alignment as opposed to more loosely couple. But that's me. And I think I might have just killed the conversation on this particular area. Is there anything, is there anything else on this topic folks would like to vocalize before we go on to try to talk about one more?
I think you're pointing at the very problem here, because when issues are correctly broken down and they go smoothly independently, there is no problem. The problem comes when things are tightly coupled together and there are need for interactions between them. And then the way of communicating might be different because of the different way we use the native features, or the convention that we do manually, because we don't have the corresponding native feature in the GitLab project management system. So yeah, if we had no coupling between the different tasks, it would be a seamless workflow. The problem is it's not. Maybe we can try to address that, and it will reduce the amount of issue we have when dealing with issues. But I don't think we can, due to the nature, the architecture of the secure features right now, at least. So this is why we are having convention to work around those problems. But it's tedious because they are complicated, and it needs to be learned. It needs to be applied consistently, and this is where it's difficult, and I can understand that. So,
All right. I'll want to dig in more. I'll look for some time and put something on secure stage because I want to look at. I would like to look at instances where this has been a problem and see if we as there's ways. I still see ways that we can decouple things. I see this as an interface problem, but that's where this is my mental block, and I know it. And so, okay, I will give myself a to do. All right, let's talk about one more item. So there was a tie at 1. And this came from our resident multitasker, Mr. McCaslin, about the weekly sync stand-ups around SaaS config UI. And knowing that he's, Taylor, can you speak to this, or are you in the other worlds?
Yeah, I can. So this is one where so for the Config UI project, we've had a Slack channel going and we have Monday stand-ups. It has been particularly helpful given the complexity of this project. It's one where every week we've been talking about blockers, the status of the project, where we're at with things, where the feature flags are at. And I don't really think we could have successfully done that async. So this is one where I think I don't want to encourage us to do this with every project, but when you have something that's really meaty, that has a lot of moving parts, that has a lot of misalignment, I think it's a good strategy to keep everyone on the same page and to sort of keep the boats rowing in the same direction, if you will. So a pattern I think that we have validated works and to be used when it makes sense.
What's everybody think?
I very much agree with what Taylor said. It was very helpful, and it is, a tool. It's, not everything is a nail, so we don't need to use it every time, but it was used appropriately in this case.
I think I wasn't a part of this, so I can't speak too deeply to it, but I would be slightly concerned about it limiting team composition and, being across time zones. So I think that's the only concern I really have with that, is it can possibly add a difficulty with regards to working with teammates in other zones. And I know we've had issues making it so that it's hard for, say, APAC to join in the conversation. And so as long as we don't see everything as a nail, like Ross just said, and we use it for like the really meaty things that we're having struggle maybe doing asynchronously. But what could be interesting is if we had a policy of async first, and if that's proving difficult to nail down what we're doing, then yeah, I think that it can be great as a forcing function. But that's just my perspective, and I also wasn't a part of this, so maybe my idea would be different, or my feelings would be different if I was in the meetings. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point about the time zones, because we were able to come up with a time that worked for everyone that was working on the project, where that's not always going to be possible for every project. But the Slack channel was also very helpful for the collaboration too. So.
Yeah, I really like the pattern of more specific Slack channels that are, say slightly ephemeral, but a little bit more long-lived. I think that's a really great pattern and still inclusive across time zones.
All righty, I'll close that one there. So we're at time. Is there any one item that we have not discussed that folks would like to talk about briefly while we're all here?
I'll keep it short. So I know I brought this up at the secure stage meeting, I think yesterday. All right. Yeah. Around feature flags. So that's an ongoing discussion I have. LinkedIn, if you scroll down, I have a link to the, or is it up maybe? Oh, no, yeah, there's the thumbs up, thumbs down. So I guess there's this kind of understanding that, product would ideally like us to have GitLab.com and self-managed ship in the same milestone. That doesn't always happen. So I think the goal of the issue that I linked there was to kind of follow up and maybe clarify the docs workflow and what should happen in terms of communicating if that doesn't happen. Because I think there was some confusion on when we say something's going to be ready in a milestone, does it mean for self-managed and .com, or does it mean it just makes it into GitLab.com and then we'll follow up with self-managed shortly after? I think we've been a little bit inconsistent with that. And there's been a mismatch with what product expects and what engineering actually delivers, at least from front end, or at least with the stuff I've worked on. So I just wanted to call that out, and that I will follow up on, but I just wanted to surface it to the team. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're at time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Everybody can stick around for a moment. I have a question to ask.